It appears to be that drivers are just simply fed up with all the layovers, the waiting times, the delays between loads. In today's video, I'm going to actually try to explain to you what happens inside a dispatch room when these delays and layovers happen, and what goes on inside an office versus what you guys are feeling out there inside the truck. Now, as some of you may know, I am in touch with over 9,000 truck drivers.
It's over 9,000!
And when drivers come into our fleet, we ask them, the golden rule is, why are you currently leaving the company that you're at? And a lot of the times it's because of delays between loads, and the layovers are the number 2 greatest reasons why drivers are leaving their companies. But I want you guys to all understand what happens inside an office when these things happen. So let's get into it. So I'm gonna break this video down in a few parts. The first thing I'm gonna talk about, why do layovers happen? Second thing I'm gonna talk about is the dispatcher's role when these things happen. The third thing I'm gonna talk about is what happens when there's an influx of trucks within one location, in one fleet. The fourth thing we'll talk about is running at a loss. And the fifth thing we'll talk about is empty miles. So let's first understand, why do layovers happen? So sometimes we're faced in a situation where we have a lot of trucks in a certain location. Now, because we have a lot of trucks in Atlanta, Georgia, I'm just gonna pick on Atlanta, Georgia right now. Now, we all know that there's a lot of freight going into Georgia and not a lot of freight coming out of it. So what happens when you have 10 to 15 trucks there every single week? Your contract work that you have will probably cover you about 10, 12, 13 loads at some time. Sometimes there's seasonalities of the lows and the highs. So sometimes you're faced in a situation where you have 15 power units, but you only have about 13 loads. So what do you do with the other 2 power units? Well, now you're stuck looking on the load boards, but sometimes the load boards don't have the work there either, or you're faced with making decisions. So this leads into our second topic, which is the dispatcher's role. Now, you guys out there know how many videos I do on load bookings, and I try to give you realistic scenarios of what happens to me when I do the load booking. So the dispatcher's role is extremely important here. Dispatchers out there need to do everything that they can in order to avoid a layover, and that takes into consideration how many empty miles are you willing to run in order to get a load. Now, if loads are paying $1.50, $1.60, which is actually the case when it comes to Florida and the case when it comes to Georgia, sometimes you can get a load for $1.50, $1.60, $1.70, and you are looking at how many deadhead miles you have to go to the pickup, and you're starting to calculate, wow, you might be running in at a loss, right? So some of the things that we take into consideration is usually when we come to Georgia or when we drive into Florida, the rate that we bill is at a much higher rate because we know that coming out of Florida and coming out of Georgia, there's not that much freight there, and we're taking a rate cut. When a new load comes out, you're 15, 20, 30 carriers, you don't know how many carriers are stuck over there looking for a load, and that's when the bidding war happens. Now, sometimes, obviously, there's only 10 loads for 30 trucks, so 20 trucks get laid over. So 20 trucks get laid over because nobody's going home empty. I mean, the dispatcher's role is very crucial because he needs to know in his mind what he's willing to do and what he's not willing to do, how many miles he's able to go. So the more experienced the dispatcher is, the more options he's gonna have on the table. So an experienced dispatcher will know, okay, maybe I book half a load from Georgia, and then while I'm driving north, I'll take another half a load either from North Carolina or Kentucky while I'm going to New York or I'm going to Ontario. So an experienced dispatcher will know how to come out of the situation a lot better than a non-experienced dispatcher. Now, just talking about the dispatcher role, for some of you out there that are interested, we actually just took out our dispatch course. It's a 9-hour course for anybody that's looking to become a dispatcher. We had an overwhelming amount of support from the audience that wanted us to take out this dispatch course. I know that there was over 2,000 forms that were filled out in the past, but if you are interested, feel free to reach out to me at sponsorship@ettransport.ca. I'll give you the link to more information about it. I could link down more information about it below. But the dispatch role is extremely important, and that will determine whether a driver gets laid over, doesn't get laid over. So you need to pre-plan as a dispatcher. Now, if I am taking a load from North Carolina or South Carolina because my truck delivered in Atlanta, Georgia, then I know that the driver has about 150, 250 miles to go empty. An experienced dispatcher will know this, and a non-experienced dispatcher will probably wait until you get empty, and then he'll try to look for a load for you, and it causes a layover for drivers out there. Now, I started this video with saying that more and more drivers are getting fed up with layovers, with waiting times, and with delays between loads. How do I know this? Because I'm in touch with a lot of drivers out there, and one of the main reasons why drivers are looking looking for other jobs or why drivers are thinking of switching their jobs is actually not because of the rate per mile. There are some high paying jobs, some jobs that are paying 65 cents per mile. There's a lot of drivers working for 60 cents per mile or 58 cents per mile. So as dispatchers, we have a lot of pressure on ourselves to try to find the loads for drivers. The last thing we're going to quickly get into is running at a loss. Sometimes you are going to run at a loss. I mean, yes, you know, it's very common, and I can show you lots of postings on DAT that when you are doing a load from Florida to certain locations, those loads are paying $1.20, $1.30, and that is running at a loss. But remember, the good dispatcher will make sure that you have enough money to go to a certain location. So when you're getting paid to go to Florida or to Georgia, that dispatcher should be billing at $3.50, $3.60, $3.70 to go down, and then he'll take the $1.20, $1.30 to go back up. The average rate per mile will be around the $2.20, $2.30. You know, some situations that, you know, there's an influx of trucks in a certain location and there really aren't enough loads, and that's why layovers happen. Now, I find that when you explain to drivers what's happening, or when you are letting them in on the loop and you're explaining to them good dispatcher has a good relationship with his driver, and when you explain to the driver that these are the reason and this is what's happening, that, you know, there's an influx of trucks in a certain location, there are no loads coming out of there, there are 10 loads and there are 30 power units there in Atlanta, there's really not much that you can do. You will lay over till the next day, and here we are battling again the next day trying to find a load for that owner operator or that company driver. So when you take the time and explain these things to the drivers, they're usually very understanding. It's when you don't take the time to explain what's happening in a certain location at a certain time with your driver, that's when they really get fed up and they start looking for another position. But hopefully this video explained to you what happens internally as a dispatcher in an office. What happens, there's a lot of pressure, and usually a good dispatcher, I mean, he's not getting up from his seat because he knows his driver is standing somewhere in the US or anywhere, because the last thing that we want as dispatchers is for any driver to get laid over at any location. You should be spending the night at home, you should be in your hometown, you should be at home with your family and kids and not on the road, you know, and not driving. So hopefully you learned something from this video. I'm Ronen, and I'll catch you in my next video.